Our show is brought to you today by Cave Day. Cave Day leads group focus sessions for global community every day on Zoom, which is perfect for writers. We all know how hard it is to make yourself set some goals, sit down, and hopefully hit that flow state where the characters start talking to you. Cave Day is here to help with that. I tried it, and I got to tell you, it worked great for me. I set out some goals, I went in for an hour-long sprint, and I not only got more work done than I expected to, it was better than I hoped for. Cave Day is like a group fitness class for your work. A trained guide leads check-ins, you do deep work sprints, and you take energizing breaks. Members report that they get 2 to 4 times more done with Cave Day's science-backed method. Join the world's most focused community and work alongside Emmy and Oscar winners. Writers Room listeners can get a 7-day trial and 50% off their first month with promo code WritersRoom at checkout. Head to caveday.org. That's caveday.org. Hey, Sam, you come up with that intro line?
You didn't tell me that was today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Writers Room with Sam and Jim. This is a show where we bring aspiring writers into our little podcasting writing room to help them work on and develop their story. We're going to do that with a fascinating woman calling us from a cemetery, Laurel Ellis, in just a little bit. But before we do that, Sam wants to go off about something. Sammy?
So here's what I was thinking. You know, we're in a period now of Me Too, post-Me Too. I don't know, are we post-Me Too? But Me Too, and looking back at how insensitive we were in all sorts of ways. And, you know, we always look back on devout Christians, say, who were also hardcore racists in the 40s. Or those screaming women in Little Rock who are like screaming invectives, men and women. But there's that famous picture, and I just key on these 2 women who are dressed in lovely 50s wear, and they are screaming hate at this young black child.
You can go back about 8 months, I think, and get the same picture.
Well, right. And I kind of wonder, do these people, when they look back, do they think, oh my God, this is the way we look back now? Mm-hmm. But I look back at, obviously the many regrets or mistakes, but politically I don't have that many things that I would change, except for Monica Lewinsky, who, and that one.
I think every good Democrat has to reevaluate that whole period of time.
Yeah, because I was like, what is she thinking? And now I'm like, she wasn't. She was 21. Right. And she was a child, and he was, what's the word for it? President of the United States.
No steeper power grade inequality ever.
The reason I bring this up, I've been going back and rewatching a cop show that I really liked. Mm-hmm. And it's not even that old. It's like 15, 20 years old. And I'm watching it, and there are all sorts of decisions in there that I am like, that's, I don't know about that one. They're not so egregious that you think, how could they possibly think that? But they are there. I don't know if they'd last today. And I remember watching it back then, and I didn't think about it one way or the other. And now my lens is shifted. And I don't know. I don't understand my lens. That's the problem. I'm not confident in my lens. I'm thinking about it, and I'm wondering, am I going to think myself all the 360 and suddenly be just as wrong about something as I'm desperately trying not to be wrong about?
You've always been good at being wrong.
Practice. But this is I don't know how to do it. And cops, it's the cop show
And cops are always sort of extreme examples of behavior. You're seeing sort of weird, dark corners of society anyway.
Yeah, you are.
Cop show.
And people on their worst day.
Yeah, people behaving badly.
Right. And, and cops are always, the good news is kind of everybody's bad on this show at some point, not constantly. And it's not terrible. It's not egregious, as I said, but it's just affected now the way I am watching television. And the next show that we go on to, I mean, this has been going on forever. We've been having
been incrementally shifting,
right?
Yeah, year by year.
But now I'm feeling like I'm a little off balance.
Yeah,
and I don't know who to trust.
Well, and it's hard to trust yourself.
That's right.
That's the biggest gap in the system.
I know not to trust myself.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
I know that I definitely should not do that. But also in writers' rooms, we have a lot of voices, and we have people that are, look, we're very progressive, and we're lefties, and we're liberals, and we're married to 2 very successful women in very different fields. But we're getting into questions of gender roles and is this a good female character or not, I don't automatically trust a person because they're women, because I've heard women take diametrically opposed
Yes,
opinions. We have and yell and get very upset with each other.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of thought. And I am very intrigued about how this is going to go down.
And just a little bit scared?
No, more than a little. But also not afraid, though. It's weird. I'm not. Let me say I'm anxious, but also thrilled to be having these conversations.
That's right.
And okay with the fact that we're going to screw it up a little bit. I wish we wouldn't, but I understand that we are all just sort of figuring it out.
You know, for me, I think that is the biggest thing, is hoping that as we all go through as a society this process of what you're talking about, of evolving, becoming more honest and open to everyone just being whoever it is that they are successfully.
Whatever that means.
And then we cut each other a little slack.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs a little room to grow and a little room to screw up, because we're people and that's what we do.
And then, the counterpoint to that is, no, you need to get this right now. Because, we're making television that's seen by millions, and it has an absolute impact on people's lives in some way. We're not emergency room doctors, and we're not teachers, and we're not like your wife, a senior government official. We make television, so I don't want to go overboard with it, but the stakes are important. And so
I think that's the benefit, though, if we have a room full of people, hopefully quite diverse, looking at something, because every moment in a TV show gets eyeballed pretty hard before it actually happens.
It definitely does.
Which is where it's a little conspicuous when you go back and you look at something and you go, oh, a whole bunch of people decided to say that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, terrifying, and honestly, it kind of makes me love our job more.
With great writing power comes great responsibility? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I'm going that big. I'm basically saying, are we up for this?
Stay tuned. We'll find out. Sam, I want to talk for a minute about our sponsor, Cave Day. Cave Day leads group focus sessions for a global community every day on Zoom. You know how sometimes we struggle to get in the zone when we're writing?
No, I never struggle. I don't know what you're talking about. I do know something about procrastination, though.
We work at our computers, and we're bombarded with distractions all the time.
I'm sitting there struggling with some sort of dialogue or something's just about right, and then I get that phone call. You know what? The phone call might not even be that important, but in that moment, it feels important because I'm procrastinating.
I know, and I've been giving you grief about reaching for your phone for years, but it turns out that somebody has come up with a solution.
They're not taking away my phone, though, are they?
They don't have to. Cave Day works like a group fitness class for your work. A trained guide leads check-ins, deep work sprints, and energizing breaks. Members report that they get 2 to 4 times more done with Cave Day's science-backed method. I tried it, and I have to say, I was impressed. You're with a group of people, and you commit to each other that you're going to turn off all the distractions for the length of the sprint, just an hour at a time.
How actually did it work for you?
It worked great. I think just knowing that you're working alongside other people, even though you're all in your own individual caves, really does help keep you on task. But you have to put your phone out of sight.
And that's what I'm talking about. That's the catch.
Check it out. I think you'll like it. And so will our listeners. Join the world's most focused community and work alongside Emmy and Oscar winners, and me and Sam, too.
Writers Room listeners get a 7-day trial, 50% off their first month with promo code Writers Room at checkout. Head to caveday.org. Again, that's caveday.org. It really works, everybody.
Okay, let's get into this week's show.
Hello, Laurel.
Hello.
Hi, Laurel.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the show. You sound great.
Oh, thanks for having me. The only place I could find that was quiet with a good signal is a cemetery. And as soon as I got here and sat down, the groundskeeper showed up and started mowing. I'm like, dude, it's not Wednesday. What are you doing?
You know the day?
I love that you know his schedule.
Of course. I've done some work in this one, but.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yes, we want to back up and talk about your side hustle / hobby.
Right.
Which is doing something in cemeteries, not on Wednesdays.
Yeah, right. Well, not this one on Wednesdays.
What is it that you do? Talk about that.
Well, I basically clean and restore headstones. Clean off the moss and all that, and if they're broken, I put them back together.
Where are you?
I'm in Montrose, Pennsylvania.
Where's Montrose?
You don't look for it on a map. You won't find it.
I'm from a town just like that in Indiana.
Oh, there you go. You understand it. I'm about an hour north of Scranton and 8 miles south of Binghamton, New York.
I like it when people say I'm an hour north of a town that you've never heard of either. Like,
right?
That tells me something. But that's cool.
Well, okay. Scranton is where the office is.
I was going to say, it has its one claim to fame, the office.
Scranton. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Well,
yes, Scranton.
Montrose has a claim to fame. I'm actually sitting about 200 yards from Richard Gere's ancestors.
That's, okay. Yeah, that's sort of a claim to fame. Yeah, why not? But I think you're the claim to fame because I don't know a single other person that restores headstones. Why would you restore a headstone? How do you?
Huh?
Just to preserve the record. Some of these people, I mean, if you have children that were born between census years and died, lived and died between census years, their headstone is could be the only record they even existed.
And why is that important to you that we know that they existed?
I've always been a history buff, and to me, it's not just the larger figures of history, it's everybody's story. Everybody had a hand in it. There are descendants of these people who want to know where their great uncle who died at 2 days of age is buried. And those are actually the stones that disintegrate quicker because they're not a high quality stone type.
You know what's so cool about this, besides the fact that Jim and I are looking at each other utterly agape and totally interested, is that the fact that you're interested in all these stories of people that don't exist to the rest of the world. That's a TV writer. That's a writer.
It's a very writer.
That's a very writer thing. I mean, you could never pick up a pen.
So many stories out of this cemetery alone. Of course, there are 1,374 people just in the older section. And I've photographed this entire thing.
Now, do you secretly kill people and put them in the cemetery? Is that something that you do too?
Well, it wouldn't be a secret if I told you.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's the writer.
I do joke around. I have a very morbid sense of humor to begin with, and I do joke around that if I was going to kill somebody, I would bury them. I know cemeteries out here that I'm the only person who set foot in them in over 100 years. I'd be like, they're in sacred ground.
The one thing we know is that you would not put them in an unmarked grave.
Right.
You would make sure it was marked.
Absolutely not. Even they deserve to be known.
Well, but she would not mark it properly.
No, it'd be like she'd mark it like 300 years old.
And that has to be something in a show somewhere that someone has murdered somebody and buried them in a grave, because that's the last place somebody would look. That has to have been on at least 5 Law and Orders. Yeah. Come on.
Right.
This is great. I mean, this is all fodder for you. So you're a tombstone restoring writer in Montrose, Pennsylvania. And you want to write television?
I do, yeah. Because what I'm writing actually started out, it was just going to be a standalone feature. And I wrote the initial one in 2 days. And then I walked around. I finished. I write pen and paper is how my first draft is written.
You wrote a full feature in pen and paper in 2 days?
Yeah.
Are you on medication?
No, maybe I should be.
I mean, Jim and I have been in the position where we've had to write scripts that fast. You're in production, and you're usually rewrites, but sometimes they have been full blank page to a shooting script in a couple days or 3 days. It's very hard and unpleasant. How did you find it?
You're just burning with passion?
Yeah, I mean, I just sat down and I started writing.
Did you have an outline?
No, God, no, I don't outline.
Did you know where it was going to end? You've never outlined?
No. Even in high school, when the history teacher would ask for an outline of the paper you had to turn in, I would write the paper and then outline it after I wrote it.
Okay, we're gonna break you.
Yes, as a TV writer, you're gonna have to do some adapting.
Yeah, and I think generally in writing, but there's a lot of ways to do it. One of the things you're doing by writing a draft is you are writing an outline. You're writing your first draft.
Yeah, because it's been built on so many times.
Right, and you're
just that first draft.
And if you can do that in 2 days, and you don't actually want to kill yourself while you're doing it, then okay, that's a way, I guess.
Yeah, most of mine take longer. It was just that particular one. I just couldn't stop writing it. And then when I was done, I walked around for an hour just tapping my pen on my leg, and I was like, "This isn't done yet. This isn't done yet." So I sat down and wrote a second story, and then a third, and then a fourth. I'm like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. This is not going to work as a feature because, okay, Fast and Furious can get away with it, Star Wars can get away with it, but I'm not them. Mm-hmm. So I switched gears and made it a TV series instead.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, especially these days. Well, and you could do an eight you can be on a 10-part, 8-part series. Like
everything is possible these days. It can be whatever.
Yeah, I just watched Mayor from Easttown, and it was I can't remember.
9, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like 7 or 9.
Yeah, that's like Good Omens. It's what, 8 or 9 episodes?
Yeah, and it was.
And they just announced the second season
of Good Omens.
Good Omens, yeah, it was on Neil Gaiman's Facebook page.
Really?
Oh, that's great.
I love that show. Yeah, that was great.
Why am I not surprised that the rural gravestone fixing mad writer 2 days for a draft is a big Neil Gaiman fan? That sort of lines up for me somehow. Well, is that thing that you wrote for 2 days the show that you're we want to talk about today?
That's the that was the foundation of it. Yeah.
Oh, thank God! I
Like
really
said,
want to hear this. I really, really want to hear this.
It's changed so much since that version.
Sure,
It's barely. The original character was a 33-year-old man. It's now a 17-year-old girl.
All right.
YA, so yeah.
Well, tell you what. Why don't you tell us sort of the logline of the show and introduce us to this world?
Okay, well, the log line of it is teen witch when she accepts a cemetery restoration apprenticeship. Her ability to interact with spirits is renewed, and unfortunately, so is her evil father's desire to steal her power and use it for his own deeds, which include unleashing the damned onto the living world.
As fathers want to do.
Certainly from the teen daughter's point of view.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's great. Okay, so before we get into like what are the powers, what does it mean to be a witch, what's her issue, maybe we should talk for a minute about the pilot and just hear like what the general story is.
Quick version, what's your pilot story?
Well, basically, it opens with the lead character. Her name is Eli, short for Elizabeth. She's 6 years old. It's on her birthday, and it opens with her father drowning her because he's trying to force her to give him her power, and she doesn't know how to do it.
What's the father's name? What's the father's name?
Joshua. So then her mother and her mother's best friend save her because they're both witches. They save her from him, and he gets locked up in the state psychiatric hospital. And right after that, her mother abandons her because her mother's like a complete flake. And so she's raised by Louise, her mother's best friend, who is a healing witch. So it goes from there to Eli is 17. She's got a major chip on her shoulder, obviously major trust issues.
What? Why?
Yeah, I can't possibly imagine where those would come from.
I just have to stop you for a second and say that opening scene, I mean, I don't know what it looks like, but that is so awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's really great.
That's a great
Yeah, I've had some people tell me this is too forceful, this is too much at once. And I'm like, why? He didn't actually kill her. She was saved.
Yeah, well, that's
exactly.
your choice. That's taste, though.
I mean, that's your fundamental tension in your show from what you've outlined. It's the father wants the thing from the daughter, and you go back to 6 and
bad enough to kill her.
Yeah, like that's kind
I don't
of
even
great.
need. I don't even. And I don't know if we even know why he tries to kill her, but the fact that he does is incredible.
Yeah, as he's drowning her, he's telling her, "Give it to me, give it to me," and she's screaming, "I don't know how."
Mm-hmm.
So he wants something, but you're not quite sure what it is.
Keep going.
That's
This
good
is
mystery.
Great.
Yeah, I love that. I'm on the hook.
Cool. And so, then it said jumps forward to 17. She's a junior in high school, and she's already got enough credits to graduate, so she skips school all the time because she'd rather hang out in cemeteries, just photograph them. And at this point, she can see spirits, but they can't see her.
Interesting.
Okay.
And so, she goes to cemeteries, and she people watches, basically, but they've been dead for 200 years. And the people in the town know that they're witches, and they only tolerate them, her and Louise.
And this is modern day.
Modern day,
Okay.
yeah. And what Eli doesn't know, and the cemetery groundskeeper who offers her the apprenticeship hints at, is that before she was born, there was some big incident with her family, her parents and Louise, that resulted in Louise basically putting not so much a curse, but like a spell over the town so that Joshua can't get back in. Okay, so it was right after he drowned Eli. Louise puts the curse on the town so that Joshua cannot get back in. But the problem is the only curse strong enough to keep him out traps everybody in the town. They can't leave.
Interesting.
So they want these witches gone. They do not want them there, but they're scared of them. So they won't do anything to get rid of them. So the one person in town that is okay with Eli being a witch, okay with her attitude, is Jana, her best friend. And they are polar opposites. Eli is morbid. She's cynical. She's a smart ass. She's an atheist. Jana is this quirky, church-going, just really spunky, and the way they play off each other, just one-liners and the insults that best friends throw at each other and everything. That's a little bit of fun in the show with that.
No, I love that. That's great. And in fact, it's kind of the opposite of, right? I mean, usually the lead is the more
the spunky, upbeat.
Yeah, and with the friend who's the the goth,
dark one.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just seeing like the Vampire Diaries and stuff like that. It's usually just someone on the side. Like I think her best friend is the witch or something.
Yeah, I mean, you're flying your freak flag. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I try.
Yeah.
Because, I figure I have the cliches. It's the witch, and, she can see ghosts, and she's going to be helping them move on once they start interacting.
Not cliche. Trope.
Okay.
Much better.
Trope.
Yeah. But yeah, and so you're spinning it, and you're right. You're spinning it, and all. I mean, just that opening scene, I'm still into. But yeah, this is great. Keep going.
Well, one that's based on this cemetery I'm standing in, it's in the pilot. She finds a headstone that has a skull and crossbones on it that shouldn't be there, because in this area they stopped using the skull as a symbol of mortality of the body on headstones after the American Revolution, because they wanted to break from the British traditions in every way they could, which included in mortuary symbolism. This headstone is dated 1858. That skull and crossbones should not be there.
How does she know that?
Just into cemeteries and just, the history of them and stone type. And although she's not a pro at the stone types, as she learns out in the pilot when she screws up.
But she's an apprentice at restoration, right?
Yeah. And no, I get that.
She's about to be introduced to it.
That's what I'm saying. And the thing is, I'm totally into this, by the way. I'm not pointing out flaws. I'm just wondering if we can say, why does she know this? Why is she interested? What is drawing her to it? Obviously, is it just because she can see dead people and that's brought her into it always? And so
that's part of it.
Yeah.
And this would actually be part of the audience for it too. That a lot of people's group that most people don't even know exists. It's called taphophiles, and this is people who are just inexplicably drawn to cemeteries. They can't explain it themselves.
That's super interesting. But she's not inexplicably drawn to cemeteries.
No, she is. Yeah,
I know
she's
exactly
just wanting to be alone. And so it's a place to see spirits, and like I said, just people watch and be a part of something.
Uh-huh.
And she even, at some point, I think it's Tony, the groundskeeper, asks her, why are you always here? Why are you doing this? And her reason is basically the same as mine for photographing cemeteries. It's the history. It's, making sure these people aren't forgotten.
Right. Like she was almost killed and maybe forgotten. And now, yeah.
And so she has that fear of being forgotten herself. And so she Googles how to clean this headstone so she can see the skull on it better because it's covered in moss. And Google tells her to spray it with vinegar, which is a huge no-no. I so many people that actually do this, and I'm just like, oh my God, you might as well take a hammer to it, because this particular stone type, vinegar dissolves it.
Mm-hmm.
So she's spraying it with vinegar, and Tony comes up and yells at her and gets on her. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And so she explains herself. I'm just trying to see this better. I want to be able to understand these people and to know these people. And he tells that's when he offers the apprenticeship. If you're serious about this, come back and I'll teach you how to do it correctly.
So let's give us the shape of the pilot. What are the big things that happen over the course of the of the pilot?
Yeah, so like in the first part is when she's trying to goes to screw up the headstone and ends up getting the apprenticeship offer. She lets down one of her walls. Letting down that wall flips the switch. Now the spirits that she's always been able to see are able to look back at her.
Because she did what? What wall?
She had this mental wall where she was blocking them out.
So the act of restoring somehow is letting them see her.
Of opening herself to new experience.
Okay.
She's let that wall down. She's let Tony in a little bit, and that crack in that wall was all it needed for these guys to come in and be drawn to her energy, because she's able to help them move on.
That sounds a little tricky to see on screen.
Well, I don't know. She's working on a tombstone, and the person whose tombstone it is turns to her for the first time.
Yeah, well, she gets excited, and she leaves the cemetery, and a spirit that she's always seen. It's an old man who's always taking flowers to a grave, and then he would disappear. Suddenly stops and looks up at her.
Right, that great creepy moment,
And they have that eye contact, and at this point, everything, the real world around her has faded to black and white, and only her, the man, and the flowers are in color.
I guess all I'm thinking is, and I like that too, is that there's a landmark moment happening here where her situation changes. And that moment needs to land in a way that I understand it. Whatever it is that, it's like, I don't know how we see her open up with Tony. I don't know what marks that, but we need to feel like she smiles and they shake hands and a breeze blows past. Something that feels like something was significant there that marks it, so that then I know that when suddenly the dead are looking at her differently,
that something has shifted.
Right.
Okay.
That's scene work, but that's good. But let's get into.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Keep going with
Jim is going into scene work, which tells you that he's really interested.
Yeah. No, this is really interesting.
He never defaults to scene work. He always wants to see big shapes first. But so you've hooked him now, and now that you've done that, let's do the big thing. So where does this go?
Okay.
I'm dying to know.
So after she leaves the cemetery, she sees a little girl in the woods. She just goes for a drive to clear her head with everything that's happening after seeing this, realizing the spirit saw her and the offer on the apprenticeship. She's just all excited and okay, just breathe. Go for a drive, and she's lured into the woods by the spirit of a little girl. Takes her to an abandoned house. Behind the house is a headstone, and she's chased away from there. That's the end of Act 1. She's chased away from there by the little girl's father, who's also dead, with a gun. He threatens to shoot her, tells her to get away.
Wait.
She's knows he's a spirit, but just that act of, you're looking at me, you have a gun to my head, I'm out of here. Because I don't know what can happen next. She doesn't know, can he hurt me? She has no idea.
That's what I was wondering about, because if this is all new to her, her understanding of the rules of the dead, much like the audience, we're going to be wondering, what are the rules? What do we know about it?
Yeah, they're going to be learning the rules with her.
Sure, right. That's absolutely the right way to do it. But my question is, simple yes or no, can the spirit actually hurt her?
No.
Okay, and that might be an issue. Okay, it's okay to use the head fake. I'm not saying that, but I wish.
Right.
I got to tell you, that's not a big turn for me though. The big turn that's so cool is when the spirit looks back at her. That's the act one. Holy shit moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping it'll be like.
This other one is just like
down the spine.
Yeah, because the other one is just a small escalation of that, like somebody coming after her. But okay.
Yeah.
But again, that was scenes.
That's going to jump into the next. Yeah, that's when it jumps into next act.
Okay, let me. Can I repitch this open to you the way you told me, but at a higher level, a higher altitude, which is, this is a story about a young woman who has a kid when she was 4 or whatever it was, 6. Her father tried to kill her, drown her, because he wanted her powers. We come back into the present day, and she is dark. She can't connect to people. She's only got one friend, and one place she finds solace is cemeteries. And why? Because she can see people. She can see dead people, and she can see dead people walking around, and they are kind of comforting to her. They're kind of like a family in a way.
But they can't.
Can't see her until one day she starts restoring gravestones, because she kind of wants people to know these people, and just doing that causes them to be able to see her, and that's our act 1. Right, so that's how I would just do it at the 40,000 foot point. Now, there's a lot of great things in there. But what's that?
But that's not quite the story she pitched. I mean, the story as she pitched it was it's her connection with Tony, the grave guy. It's not her restoring the gravestone.
Oh, really? I don't get that. Why Tony?
Well, and that's my question, because you're going to the magic of it.
Well, I'm going to her opening up and somehow trying to connect with these people by actually doing something for them opens it up.
And what I'm saying is I think that exposes a point that we should talk about, which is you're making about her trying to connect to the dead people, which then opens that door, as opposed to her connecting with another random human being, which opens that door, which is what I was struggling with.
Which is it?
Okay, so connecting to Tony instead of like the spirit.
Well, what you had her was connecting with Tony, right? And that's what made the spirits able to see her.
I didn't get that. Is that
that's what I understood.
Is that what you meant?
Well, I mean, it's Tony making the offer and her accepting it.
Right. So, but it was her having this interaction with Tony, which is what changed things for her.
Yeah.
What was the offer? To help to fix the gravestones?
To teach her how to do it correctly.
But it didn't feel. I know what's confusing you, Sam, because you're seeing that as somehow having to do with the dead recognizing that she's out to help them. But that's not how it plays to me in how I understand the scene. I think Sam's instinct is right. It feels like it should be in some way her reaching out to them gets a response, as opposed to her reaching out and connecting with Tony.
I think that's your stumbling on it. I'm not. That's how I heard it entirely, which is, Tony says, oh, there's this thing you can do. If you like being here, you should do this.
You're not hearing her. You're not hearing what she's saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Laurel, which is it? Obviously, it's what I'm saying, right?
It's kind of a mix of both.
Oh no, that's not good.
But it's not. You're saying she's there. She's doing the grave apprenticeship, or she's working this gravestone. She talks with Tony, who busts her for doing the wrong thing, and he says, if you're interested, you can come be an apprentice. And she says, okay. But what you called out was that it was her connection with Tony, her opening up to him, that let the dead see her. And I think what Sam is
when she lets that wall down.
What Sam is looking for instinctively is it's not that. It's the act of caring for the dead, in some way expressing her intent to help them, that then lowers a wall between her and the dead.
I mean, yes.
And Tony isn't. He doesn't want Tony to really be part of that equation, and I think he's right, because Tony is sort of extraneous. She wanted to be about her and the dead connecting in some way. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I don't know if this is an important distinction, to be honest, not to me. So I was just trying to get to 50,000 feet. That's all I'm trying to say is the point is something happens in the cemetery. She works on these gravestones. She connects with Tony, whatever it is, and oh my God, the dead can see her. So that's how I would pitch it out. So because I just am worried that if I say, all right, let's talk about the rest of the pilot, we'll still go scene by scene, which is, by the way, what every writer wants to do. Because you love your scenes.
Yeah, and it is. And for me, it's so hard to pull back.
Yeah.
And this is part of one of the things that I want to discuss with you guys about, like the pitching and everything, because I know it too well
right.
to look at the big picture.
Yep. And
You know what I mean?
You know all the delicious parts. And you're like, no,
Yeah,
you got to
and
hear
like
this
all the
next delicious part. It's so good.
Exactly. And the secrets that I try not to blurt out.
Right.
Because that would be a spoiler for, episode 6 or whatever.
This is why, I don't know if you're married. Are you married? But if you have a significant other.
Separated.
Okay, well, I'm guessing what broke up the marriage is what would break up my marriage, which is me having to tell her every beautiful thing we ever came up with. And they have to listen to this. And by the way,
he wasn't the slightest bit interested. So I was like, fine, you do your thing, I'll do mine.
Well, that's not a bad thing. And I don't tell my wife,
not.
Megan, I don't tell her this stuff either. I used to in the beginning, and then I was like, don't you get it? Why aren't you tracking
your
this?
eyes glaze over.
Exactly. Jim, do you tell Lisa any of this stuff when we're talking? Rarely. I mean, they don't even read our scripts half the time. It's writers talking to writers is great, but
yeah. Now my kids, I'll sit there and just like get excited, be sitting there rattling off about something, and they're just looking at me like, "Okay, so what's for supper?"
100%. There's no supper because I just figured out something cool, and I'm going to go work on that.
Sorry, I'm busy. I have a demon possession going on. Have Pop-Tarts.
Right. Okay, so in 6 more story beats, what happens in the rest of the pilot from after the point the ghost dad chases her away?
Okay, well, then she gets into talking to Louise and learning some of her history and finds out her father is dying. And this is where she is told, you have to let your mother back in. You have to accept her training because as your mother, she's the only one who can train you.
Why does she need the training?
In order to be able to hold Joshua off. When he dies, he will no longer be restrained by his physical body. He is going to be able to attack her on the spiritual level, and she needs to be able to fight him off. But she's completely untrained because her mother had abandoned her, and she hates her mother for it, obviously.
Right. I'm struggling not to say, and so why doesn't he just throw himself off a bridge? But there must be, I'm sure you have an answer for it.
He's locked up in a state psychiatric hospital.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so he can't.
Okay.
Otherwise he would because he hates being alive because it restricts him.
Great. Stupid story logic. Who cares? Let's keep going. So, okay. So dad is dying. If he dies, she's screwed. And she's got to help him stay alive. And the only way she can do that is if she gets her witch powers back, which means that she has to be trained by her mother who abandoned her. And she probably has some feelings about that. Yeah,
she wants absolutely nothing to do with Renee whatsoever. Renee lives in Salem, and she's like, oh, Louise is telling her she can come back, she can stay with us, she can train. And then Eli's like, no, I absolutely refuse. Now, in the meantime, she's got this little girl who's lured her to the house and is trying to get her help.
Keep going.
Help to do what?
Oh, yeah, help to do what? Great. Good question.
Yeah, help to move on. And the little girl is telling her spirit is trapped. She needs to move on to the next spiritual level.
And how can she help her do that? How can Eli help her do that?
That's part of Eli's problem is she doesn't know. So she's got to try to figure out how. So and Louise can give her hint. Oh, that wasn't broken last time I was here. Damn. Oh, sorry.
You found a new headstone.
Yes. That was snapped off yesterday.
Okay, are we talking to Eli or Laurel? Who are we talking to here exactly?
A little bit of both.
All right, so let me just talk about what's so great here. I'm hoping that it's intentional. But I think it's so great is that she doesn't want to train because she hates her mother. She has to train to save the world because her father's going to unleash the dam.
And he's dying, so there's a clock on everything.
There's a clock.
Yes.
But now the one ghost that she cares about the ghost from the beginning because they're kind of her family, and then one ghost in particular, little girl, super cute, needs her to be trained, and she's going to do it for her. Is that what the structure you got?
Yeah, she's going to learn basically just enough to help.
Well, that's not
Dora.
That's
Dora's
fine, but
girl.
she has to train for the girl, even though she puts her back in contact with her mother.
Yep.
That is beautiful. I mean, the structure. Hold on, Laurel. No more details. Let's just enjoy. Let's just enjoy the beauty of what you created right now.
Right, and so. What does the pilot end with? The little girl being freed?
Well, there's a bunch of steps there, but yeah, okay.
Well, no, I'm just saying, does it end with her successfully helping the little girl get out?
Yeah, after she finds out the little girl's lying to her and is actually a sadistic little bitch,
okay,
then
Laurel,
she forces her on.
Laurel,
I like that.
You just need to stop talking to us. I need you just to because you don't need us. This is so every time you surprise the shit out of me every single time.
Yeah.
Of course the little girl turns out to be a bitch. Right. That's fantastic. The 17-year-old doesn't want to deal with the mother. By the way, so many mother-daughter issues there. They're going to bitch at each other constantly. Meanwhile,
Constant.
Jenna, the best friend, is like sunshine and roses and is giving shit to her friend who's always dark. And then the only person I don't understand is Tony. Right? And who gives a shit? I assume
he's the one teaching her how to restore the headstone. So
yeah, but he doesn't have any character yet that we've heard about. But
Jana's
not
got
yet,
some.
no. But he knows the family. He knows the town secrets that he's holding back from her.
Oh,
And so she's got it. And he's in town. He's known in town as the guy who just like grunts at people. He doesn't talk to anybody. So the fact that he's even talking to her is like, wait a minute.
What's Jana's
What's
secret?
up? Now, Jana actually is the one I'm having a little trouble with. Making her a deep enough character.
Yeah, I sort of want her to actually be a witch, or for Joshua to possess her, or something that takes the bright and sunny girl and turns her upside down.
Yeah, she does in a couple later episodes. One of the problems is Eli realizes that if she doesn't accept the training from Renee, she can't keep Jana safe because the spirits can't hurt them, but demons can come through too.
okay.
And she can't protect Jana.
Okay.
And Jana doesn't like it, but and Jana's mom is like super strict and is like, you're not hanging out with that child anymore.
Okay, so we always say there's no extra episodes, so there's only the pilot that we need to worry about. But there's nothing wrong with talking about extra episodes because you can mine from them. I wonder if Jana's thing is simpler. It doesn't have to be about witches. It doesn't have to be about that. Maybe it's when she sees her friend who she knows is a witch and she loves and they're fine and they're BFFs, and then she sees her do something as a witch and it scares the shit out of her.
Or it makes her jealous.
Or
I like that.
Any of those things, right?
Because I was just thinking of the good girl who's brought up
Yeah.
Christian to believe in the power of the church and God and all that kind of stuff. But that's all sort of unrealized for her. But then she sees this girl who it turns out is a witch, who her mother thinks is awful. But what she sees is someone who's actually doing something. And that's very appealing, even though it goes against the way she was raised.
Could be.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a bunch of ways to go. That's a way, the scared way, that puts a little stain in their relationship, muddies up their relationship a little bit, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, actually, a little further along in the pilot, one of Eli's decisions gets Jana's boyfriend killed.
That would definitely mess things up. So that would be more in the scary line than the jealous line, because she sees that it happens and, it makes her angry, of course, but also a little scared of her friend. Even if, I assume, of course, it wasn't her fault. It wasn't Eli's fault.
Yeah, she blames Eli. Eli blames Eli.
Mm-hmm. And then they reconcile in the pilot, I hope?
A little bit.
A little bit. Even better. God, that's exactly the right answer. Yes, a little, so we can see that there's hope, but not enough so that I don't want to come back for episode 2.
Right.
Right. Great.
How much do we feel the presence of Joshua in the episode? We see him in the opening when he tries to kill her as a little girl. We talk about him being in the state hospital or so on. Do we have a sense of his presence, or that he's perhaps manipulating things in the background in some way?
Not so much in the pilot. There is a character that he sends to keep an eye on Eli, but this character doesn't want to keep an eye on Eli. He wants to be. He's an entity who's under Joshua's power and doesn't want to be. And Eli pushes him away when she finds out he's with Joshua. And you see him talking to Joshua at the end.
That's great.
But that is actually one of my issues. I don't have enough. There's not enough of that sense of danger from Joshua. I feel like
I think what you've got is actually perfect, because you have a mysterious stranger show up in town, particularly if we start talking about Joshua, and then you maybe more in the middle you see the guy go have some interaction with Joshua. Because then I know, this guy who they've set up a curse and they've walled him out and they've done all this stuff, who's such a threat and tried to kill her, he's working through secondary figures to try and still get at her. Mm-hmm. That's all you really need at that level, I think, because we have so many other things to understand in the pilot.
And That's true. By the way, let me just try to play at Laurel's level on this, which is very high. That guy could be Tony, right? That's the big car turn. Now, the thing is...
I didn't even think of that.
Well, here's what's interesting. It doesn't have to be it was Tony all the time.
Or Jana.
No, I think that's too much. But personally, I think the reason Tony works is I think he's got leverage against Tony. But why does Tony know all the secrets of the town and know all this stuff? He's wrapped up in some way. Laurel, let me finish because I know you know exactly how, and you've written 18 different pages on everything he knows, I'm guessing, or they're all in your beautiful head. But maybe he's the reason he showed her how to do the tombstones and all of that was because of Joshua. Because Joshua is basically, in a sense, training her long distance.
Because it's going to start breaking down these walls and opening doors that are going to allow Joshua in. Right, in some way.
Yeah, and he wants Eli trained because he wants her at her peak when he steals her power.
Right. So
because then the power will be the strongest. So untrained, she's really useless to him.
Right. And so you can probably keep a lot of what you have, but you would have to just put some stink on Tony earlier. somewhere in the middle of somewhere in the script. But that would be a huge car turn. Like, oh crap! And I don't know how to do that. I just get to pitch stuff. I don't actually have to do the work. That's why we do the podcast. Because that's the fun part.
Right?
Right. It's the easy part.
I have an idea. See ya.
I know. Jeez Louise, there's so much here.
No, that's well built.
That's really. Do you have a 17-year-old daughter, by the way?
19.
Okay, so I have an 18-year-old
daughter.
daughter.
No, I do actually have, 17-year-old. She's trans, but that's why it throws me off still.
Oh, right.
She only recently came out, so I'm like, no, wait,
Well, now I have an interesting question. So about this character then thing. So you have a trans daughter, right?
Yeah.
So are trans daughters just as bitchy to their mothers as non-trans daughters?
Well, she's autistic.
Oh, that's a whole.
So I mean, she's kind of high functioning, but it's actually part of the reason why I had to come to the cemetery to do this, because she can't be quiet.
Oh, okay.
She didn't talk until she was 3, and now she's making up for it.
Well,
so she can be very much. There are days where I'm just like, excuse me.
Oh, okay. So definitely she has some of those days. So because I love the idea of the mother-daughter relationship, which is normal, all right, or at least let me say regular of the going at it. The mother-daughter dynamic. I have 2 daughters, by the way, and I have one that's 18, and I just watch it. I'm like, holy crap. And I've said to my daughter, while you're being this way, you know that you're a cliche. This is like everybody does this. So many women, girls do this. Don't you want to be, you always say you want to be different. You don't want to be as boring as your parents, but you're being boring. And that did not work.
That's just like a really short fuse that you don't want to be near when it goes off.
Oh, I've got
I remember telling one of my nieces, who I think she's 25 now, when she was a teenager, and she was going off about something, and I'm just laughing at her. She said, "Why is this funny?" I said, "Because teenage girls are just the nastiest creatures on this planet, and you need to get over yourself." And she just started in on me. I said, no. I was a teenage girl once too, remember. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're 25. You were going to look back and go, Jesus Christ, why didn't they beat the shit out of me?
Believe me, every parent wonders. They don't understand how close they get every day.
So, Laurel, I want to take this conversation and pull it back into your story, because I'm wondering if, and again, you probably have 17 pages written out on this, but I'm thinking about the relationship between Renee and Eli, and I'm wondering if Eli isn't reading things wrong. I mean, I could see a world where, say, Renee wigged out, bailed out, didn't want to train her because she knew that would only prime her for Joshua to want to take her over, and
she had a reason for leaving that was not terrible.
And that this is part of the great miscommunication between them, that Renee, maybe she didn't explain herself, she did bail out on her. It may be a bad way to do it, but she had a motivation.
I'm guessing, Jim, what the reason you're drawn to that is it gives them, her mother's trying to fix this, and yet there's anger, and there's being 17, there's the mother-daughter, there's the powers, there's the stakes of the world. Everything is between the reconciliation of this relationship.
And her mother was with Joshua to make her, right? So there was some relationship. What was that relationship? How did this all come about? And Renee's sort of the key to understanding for the audience as well. Who's Joshua? What does he want? How did he get this way? What the hell's really going on?
Yeah, Joshua is, well, basically, I mean, like, his backstory is his parents were both witches, but they were weak. So he didn't inherit strong power. And then Eli is born with the power, and so he's jealous of her. Mm-hmm. But when they were teenagers, he was the bad boy, like to the troublemaker, and Renee was drawn to that. It was one of those situations where she's like, I can make him change. He will change for me, but I love him. And Louise is going, don't do this. Mm-hmm. And so she married him anyway, against everybody's recommendation.
Gotcha.
And there is actually part of the relationship between Renee and Eli that is, Renee is not Eli's biological mother.
Louise is?
Yep.
Okay, but that's a nice spoiler, but so what? What are the ramifications of that? What does that mean?
Well, that's why Eli doesn't know it, and that is why Renee ignored her. She was actually afraid that giving her attention to this child that wasn't hers would actually make Joshua jealous and make him kill her. So later when Eli finds out and Renee tells her, I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid he would have killed you, and that's why I didn't give you any attention. And Eli's sitting there going, well, he did it anyway. Here we are.
I have a feeling that's a spoiler in episode 6, right? Or something later down the road.
6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's because it's not much of a spoiler now. Because we don't have a relationship with any of these people
because
yet.
now it's like, who cares?
So don't try to, I see Jim's brain is working on it, but I don't think it's important.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm not sure why it matters when all is said and done.
Well, that's because it's the personal thing more than anything else, and that's later on down the road.
It's just weird to me, like, that Joshua wouldn't know who the real mom was. Like,
Well, he knows,
Yeah, he knows. I don't
but
think
he
Eli doesn't
want.
know.
Yeah, he forced himself on Louise, and when she had Eli, he stole her and said, "If you tell anybody, I will kill this child."
Laurel, let me interrupt you, and let me. I hate to. Let me tell you why. More details are just going to make this harder to get. It's not going to solve the problem. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. As soon as you said it's episode 6, I'm like, okay, blah blah blah, and we can't steal it for the pilot. So
that was really the only question.
Right.
Is there something here we could steal for the pilot?
And I don't think we need it.
I don't think we need it.
The pilot is so dense in a good way. So there's so much happening, and it's so emotional, right? I mean, I love these characters.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, and you've written this how many times now?
Oh God, I don't even know.
Good.
Well,
and how long is it? Just out of curiosity, how many pages is it?
54 pages.
What's your target? Is like broadcast, basic cable, streaming?
Well, I think it would probably be more streaming just because of some of the language. Because I mean, there's no F-bombs in it, but Eli's constantly swearing. Just basically breaks a headstone and is like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
And a lot of the broadcast wouldn't take that.
Well,
Plus
that's not a reason they wouldn't take that. Just so you know, I mean, they'll take it,
okay.
and then at the last minute, you just swap dialogue out. I mean, because this has obviously a Buffy element to it.
That's something. The sort of activated teen thing is a classic sort of network thing. But there's also, like Warrior Nun on Netflix.
Right,
I think was super successful.
Mm-hmm.
And
have you watched that, Laurel?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you
What's
should
it called?
check that out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Warrior Nun. It's kind of fun.
Warrior Nun, and it's a woman who doesn't know that she is. I mean, you'll
with
see
some
it.
interesting story pieces. The other thing I might suggest to you is for background is one of the newest Stephen King novels. I say one of because he's probably published 2 since I read it a couple months ago.
Since you said it,
yeah, right. Was called Later, which he published through Hard Case Crime, who did publish the book that our series Haven was based on. But it was called Later, and it's about a young boy who can see dead people. And it raises some questions that might be useful for you to look at just to see how he went with them.
Yeah, I'll have to find that. I really don't read a lot of Stephen King because he's anticlimactic.
He has acknowledged his endings are not always his strongest suit.
He did it in...
No, his older stuff is good, but then after I've read Bentley Little and Stephen King, it's like Mother Goose.
I liked Under the Dome a lot for an ending. I actually liked that ending. I don't know if I'm alone or not. But I don't know if you saw It. He was in the second one, I think.
That was the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. I almost laughed myself into an asthma attack.
Okay, Laurel, you're insane and dark and
me and my oldest daughter, are both looking at each other going, this is supposed to be scary, while all of my friends are going, oh my God, I couldn't even finish it.
I had to change my pants. I don't know. I don't understand what you're talking about. But anyway, for those who haven't seen it, Stephen King is in there and he plays some antique store owner, and they make the joke in there, and he complains about an author that can never has good endings, can never finish a book. But setting that aside, I mean, what are you going to do with this script? It's great. I mean, I don't know about the script, but the story is great.
Right. Working on Ashley, my managers suggested that I try turning it into a podcast, just to get it off the ground, turn it into a fiction podcast, which I have also written it in podcast form.
Of course you have. You did that last Tuesday, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I probably drive them crazy because every time they turn around, I'm like, oh, I rewrote this scene, so here's the latest version.
Yeah. I can only imagine, we've done that with our agents where we're like, okay, we get notes and then we send them another draft a certain amount of time later. And I think, oh my God, these poor people, they have to read another one.
Reading another version.
Another version.
They see my name on their email and they're like, oh God, now what?
Yeah, now what? I think a podcast is a great idea, although a sample, if you have a good sample, the manager should be sending the sample out.
Well, that too, it's kind of both and.
Yeah.
I think our experience has certainly been, like the entire time we've come out here, the least respected thing in television is a television script. But if it's been a podcast or an article in a magazine, or you self-publish it, your diary as a diary, it'll get better attention.
It may. That's right.
Yeah, and that was actually part of the problem. We did a sample, and it came out pretty good. They did, because it's broken into 2 parts because of the length. And I think they did the first half of it. But then I rewrote it so much that it's a lot darker now.
Have you ever had anyone read your script out loud? Have you ever done a reading for your script?
No, I haven't. I've thought about trying to do that, but just where I live, there's nobody here.
Well, it doesn't.
Except for
It doesn't have to be here.
You can do it on Zoom these
You
days.
can Zoom it. There's always. It's not. The actors don't have to be amazing for you to do it either. It's just hearing the words out loud can really help before you do it, making a podcast. I really wish you the best of luck with this, because I think you've really threaded the needle. You threaded the needle of a lot of story. You brought it all into the pilot. It makes sense in its way. I haven't read the script, but I'm just saying it's got the full, and it's got fleshed out characters.
And you've sort of teased the right questions and the right pieces of tension,
which is hard.
Yeah, to make me curious about episode 2 and where it goes from there.
right.
And I'm guessing
Awesome.
your first draft was just so much stuff, and you have whittled it down to its core, which is what we all do, and it's really hard.
Yeah, and the first draft, the one that was written as a feature, I actually submitted it to Austin, just shits and giggles. Do I have anything here? And that first draft, as it was written, no changes, made it to the second round.
There you go. Because it's
I was like,
just
okay.
so great. And you're right. There are the tropes. You said right away, all right, there's tropes. You use that C word. Let's not use that. But but the trope word is right, and then you funked it up. And then that was that you did, and that's the magic. And it's like, well, it's just so easy. Just take some tropes and make them different. And yeah.
Right.
That's easy to say. But you really did. You really did it. And
Yeah, no, this is a winning project.
I want to listen
be.
to this podcast if it comes out. And the reading thing, it really helps. It really helps.
Okay.
And have you ever heard your words read out loud?
Yeah, well, on the one sample for the podcast we did, yeah.
Okay.
And you're right, it did, because there were some lines where I'm listening to it and I'm like, that's cringy.
Things tend to,
That's what it's good for.
that's really what it's good for.
That out.
Yeah.
And we've heard scripts of ours read at table reads by actors we really admire, and when they can take a line that's okay and make it amazing, but then and they can whiff on lines too. But sometimes I just feel bad because the line is so regular, and you
kind of let them down a little bit.
Just give me 15 minutes. Just give me 15 minutes, man.
Yeah.
Laurel, you're so entertaining, but clearly a writer. I hope you keep doing it. This is great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day there in the cemetery. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
See who you can
That's up
rescue.
to these people.
Thanks, Laurel. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all we've got for you this week. Our producer, J.R. Zamora-Thal, is working the mixing board.
Our logo was designed by Julien Debar-Monclair, and our music was provided by Buddha-Rays out of Austin, Texas.
If you want to get in touch, we are at The Salmon Gym on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as The Writer's Room with Sam and Jim.
And if you like hanging out in the room with us, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell a friend, would you, so we can get JR paid. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.